So what we found by some of the mothers over the last 5 years, is that they were reporting significant improvements by doing the exercises with their children. And it's about 10 minutes a day. And to the point where they were sleeping through the night, not getting hot sweats, their cognitive fatigue had dropped, their palpitations had reduced, significantly, anxiety greatly, sleep.
Welcome to Minds Thrive Talking, a podcast hosted by psychologists that encourages, revives and refreshes our thinking about mental well-being by asking one simple question: what helps minds to thrive?
Welcome, Andrew Harpen-Salter and Dr. Dani Hristova from the Open Practice. It's lovely to have you both with us here today. Do tell us a little bit about yourselves and your clinic.
I'm technically the clinical director. I think that we've been open for just over a year, and the whole idea is to work with people so that they feel that they matter above everything else and their families. And we wanted to create an environment that was an MDT setting. So what that means is that people from lots of different disciplines, so that we can learn from each other. So we have nutritional therapy, physiotherapists, we have a suite of neurophysios, and a dedicated gym. We have developmental therapists, psychologists, psychiatry, and basically what we're wanting to do is when someone comes in and they're struggling, their family will be struggling too, and be able to look at what will help and prioritize their needs. We're also really lucky that we're working in partnership with a local charity, Neurodiversity Action, and they also help people who can't afford private therapy. So it's a very unusual setup. The only people employed at the practice is Ben, who you're going to meet later. He's a assistant psych and research assistant and a practice manager. So even I'm not employed by the practice. I rent a room here too. So we're all on an even footing.
Can I just add, I come to your clinic with my little boy, and you mentioned earlier that people matter, and you really do feel that when you come to your practice. It's a beautiful clinic. It's very holding. You've got great expertise there. It's such a blessing to my life. So
well,
thank
actually,
you, Andrew.
It's because of parents. I had a dream of this 15 years ago, but no money to do it, and a parent has funded it, and another family has helped set up the charity. So I think we've got a chance of creating something very unique. And the idea is to implement what's called NICE guidelines, which is best practice, but also implement cutting research where NICE guidelines are often several years behind, and also contribute to research. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is what things have we found in practice make a real difference. And it's really lovely to be able to talk about something that involves important for women and also the whole family, because it impacts everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Dani, do tell us a little bit about your role at the clinic.
Yes, so my role in the clinic to start with was to support Ben in setting up the Menopause study. This study is sponsored by the independent, it's approved by the independent research committee. So we had to prepare all the required study protocol, patient information sheet, deal with any questions from the ethics committee. And now we reach the point where the study is approved and we can start the recruitment. Yes.
Well
Exciting.
done, Dani. So just to clarify, Dani, you're a medical doctor, aren't you?
Yes, so my previous background is in clinical research. And I added as interest an area where continuing work menopause treatment. But I was lucky as well to do a number of menopause specific studies, which opened my eyes to how much this is needed for women who go through menopause in terms of support they require. We all know that GPs don't have much time to dedicate for a lengthy consultation, and many of the menopause symptoms are just so varied that even the person going through this may not link all of them together. And again, it was linked to my personal experience of going through early premature menopause. But the more I went through the British Menopause Society training, and the more I got deep into the research and what was available, I realized we really need to do more to support women. And of course, I'm a believer in the hormone replacement treatment as the evidence-based approach. But at the same time, I'm extremely lucky that I have the opportunity to be part of the open practice clinic, just because they have this holistic approach, which of course is, there is plenty of evidence showing that holistic approach works best. So of course there is the evidence of HRT, but if one can approach any strategies which may reduce stress and promote well-being, this will always work best. So
Danny, can I just pause you there? When you say holistic, can you tell me what does that mean for you? What are you drawing on to sort of feed into that?
Yes, so specifically with this study, it will be the inclusion criteria would be women who might not be eligible to be on HRT, but also those who are eligible and are currently with receiving treatment with hormone replacement therapy. So in this respect, we will be able to see what we already know, that HRT is very effective for most women. But there might still be areas where they would see even additional benefit if they have the opportunity to use strategies such as breathwork, exercises, ways to train the vagus nerve so that they have more balanced parasympathetic nervous system. And that will just enhance their well-being further.
Okay, can I pause you there? So for our listeners, and actually for me a bit as well, tell me about the vagus nerve. Instantly my head goes to casinos and nightlife in America, out in the desert. We're not talking about that, are we? Tell me what you mean.
Yes, so it's it's good to clarify to start with. So when we talk about the parasympathetic nerve, and the vagus nerve is part of it, we also, the opposite of this is the sympathetic nervous system. And the best way to imagine this is to think when we are in a fight or flight situation. When we are very stressed, that's when the sympathetic nervous system is activated. So we feel a rapid heartbeat, we are sweating, we have all the adrenaline to do things. But in context of menopause, that's already know that with the lowering of estradiol, it's more likely to have the sympathetic nervous system activated. So we know women report that they're constantly feeling stressed, easy to go into rage, or just feel more nervous and have trouble sleeping. Hot flushes as well may be part of this. Well, what we want to promote is the parasympathetic nerve, parasympathetic response, which is the rest and digest part of the nervous system. And we may want to talk more about this in terms of importance. What is known is that the parasympathetic nervous system, when it's more active, it has effect as it stimulates also the anti-inflammatory effects in the body. So equally important for both men and women in terms of, we know when we are consistently stressed, when we are consistently under the sympathetic nervous tone, when this is predominant, we are more likely to be having our immune system may struggle, and we may fall sick more frequently. And therefore, if we put efforts to have better parasympathetic tone, that would be beneficial for less inflammation, and therefore again better increased well-being. So it's quite important to pay attention to both, and I'm sure Andrew and Ben would be able to say more in this respect.
Well, I would love to hear more about what brought you down this journey, because it's fascinating, and it's certainly not a connection that I was making. Menopause, thinking about the vagus nerve. And Andrew, I know that the vagus nerve is something that you know an awful lot about. So tell us about what motivated you to engage in this study.
We came to this was I was working with children with neurodiversity and adults, and calming their and regulating emotions is extremely difficult sometimes. So I found a chap by the name of Bennett Federick, and he was using vagus nerves for pain. I was working in the neuropsychology team, assessing and diagnosing people with ASD and ADHD and treatment. And I just wondered if we could make a real difference, but not with pain, but with regulating the nervous system. And so we did that work, and we got some very impressive results. But we also did it with severe depression, severe OCD, and got the same results. Because if you like, whatever's stressing us, whatever condition we have, the fight and flight is overactive, and it's different ways to calm that system down. In the menopause, there's lots of studies that show that the sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. It's affecting estrogen production. In fact, it's cutting it off on occasions, and it also increases, which is amazing, to some of the research that's been done, increasing women's risk of Alzheimer's by double what it is for men. And so, and that's the work of Lisa Mosconi, just a fantastic researcher. And it's brilliant that women are leading the way, because otherwise we wouldn't be where we are. So what we found by some of the mothers over the last 5 years, is that they were reporting significant improvements by doing the exercises with their children. And it's about 10 minutes a day. And to the point where they were sleeping through the night, not getting hot sweats, their cognitive fatigue had dropped, their palpitations had reduced, significantly, anxiety greatly, sleep. So a whole range of symptoms that were very much pegged to things that my wife was struggling with too. And the menopause doesn't just affect one person in the family, it affects everybody. And it is incredibly debilitating for a number of women, not everybody. And so we decided last year to run several pilots, groups, programs, and that the success of those led to this research. And we're incredibly proud of Ben and the work that he's done. And he's very much led all the background work on this. And we're incredibly grateful for Danny to come in and help us because of her extensive research background in the menopause. So we stumbled on this, and what we believe is happening is by activating the parasympathetic nervous system, is bringing down the sympathetic nervous system. We don't know that, we're just getting better results. But we've also, I spent my pension last year on ultra-human rings so that we could give participants rings if they so wished, so that we can actually see hard data to see progress. So it's like an aura ring, pretty much, very much the same. So So basically, it's like a tech watch where it takes your heart rate, it takes your heart rate variability, it does sleep, motion, and it collects all that data and it puts it on your phone for you, so you can view it. So the purpose is to lend the rings out to anybody who's willing to wear them. They don't have to wear them, but if they are, then what it will helpfully give us is hard data to show if the temperature at night had changed in their body by the parasympathetic nervous system, by being calmer and more relaxed, if it affects the body temperature and that's allowed them to sleep deeper, or if the temperature hasn't changed, but they're just sleeping deeper. So we don't know what's happening there from the work we've done before. And I just thought it was really important to try and find out, hence why we got wearable tech. And we're running also a pain management clinic, and everybody on that pain management clinic will also get wearable tech, because variable heart rate is being seen to predict pain flares the next day. So the role within the vagus nerve, within health long-term and managing long-term conditions as well as our general health, is becoming more and more central to care and how we deal with it. And I think this is incredibly exciting. And we're just really grateful for Danny to come and lend us her expertise, because we'd be in the dark if it wasn't for her.
Well, I think this is fascinating. So if I were to come and join your study, so I would wear one of your rings, but what else might I have to do as a participant?
Well, because it's a study which is, again, as part of a research study, we want to compare it against standard care. So 1/3 of the participants will continue with their usual treatment, but both groups, they need to meet the inclusion criteria. And that would be, we're specifically focusing on women in peri or postmenopause who have moderate to severe symptoms. And that would be one way, after we ask the participants to complete a certain questionnaire looking at the menopause symptoms, others at the anxiety symptoms or the sleeping pattern, we will be able to see if the intensity of the symptoms reduces during the 8 weekly sessions and 4 weeks after the end of the treatment sessions. So in this specific study, it's women who are peri or postmenopausal with a specific intensity of the symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So is there a cost associated with joining your study?
None. In fact, we're not allowed to do a cost because it is a study. And because of Danny's expertise as a medical doctor and specializing in the menopause, in fact, people get a free consultation after the program for participating with Danny about reviewing what their care is and if there's anything else that could be done. So again, and Danny hasn't charged us at all for any of her time. And I think a lot of people here do a lot of things for clients that are well above, because I think we feel quite privileged to be here.
Yes, I agree. And just to emphasize what Andrew was saying, many of the studies which take place, there is usually a conflict of interest, or they may be sponsored by a specific device, and we are saying the outer human ring device. And that's a good opportunity to mention that, and as Andrew already said, there is no affiliation, no sponsorship from external company. Outer Human Ring is not sponsoring the study. It's something which we know works effectively to capture the changes in temperature, heart rate variability, and it's independent study. So whatever our findings would be, it would be based on the research, and it's not going to be influenced by a third party expecting us to have positive results. So I think that that's a big strength of the study. It's independent.
It sounds like a wonderful opportunity for women, and I just want to make sure. So if I saw something like that, I think, are they going to do anything horrible to me? I've not heard that you're going to do anything horrible or invasive to anybody.
No, so it would be based on the pilot study, which Ben will talk a bit more about it. But in fact, what the program will consist of will be 8 weekly sessions, 8 weekly 1-hour sessions. And we have chosen to have them at the time of the day, which would allow women of working age to take part. So it will be between 6. There would be one group running between 6 and 7, and another group from 7:30 to 8:30. So there will be this opportunity to do it at a time which might work for everyone. And the actual group session will be then the other researcher will be going with the ladies in the group through different strategies to help with the parasympathetic nervous system by guided breathwork exercises, providing tips on what to do in between the sessions, and as well as giving the opportunity to practice with a gentle body movement, which may as well help with the parasympathetic tone. So all this would be done within the frame of 1 hour weekly, and there would be expectations that those in the active group may continue doing some of these exercises at home. And of course, all this would be for those who want to wear the ultrahuman ring, where we have the opportunity to see how their physiological state changes during the treatment period.
So just to clarify, if you want to be involved in the study, you need to attend in person, and your clinic is based in Hampshire, Basingstoke, isn't it? So you'll need to be able to reach Basingstoke without too much trouble. And it sounds like a wonderful gift that you are giving to humanity.
I think it's about.
Thank you, both of you.
I think it's about wanting to evidence what we do is effective, and I think that's really important. I think it's very easy to think we're doing something that's helpful and it not. Also, over the last 20, 30 years, I've worked with a lot of women who have been devastated by anxiety and the symptoms of menopause, and being able to drive across the country and then suddenly not being able to because they're experiencing panic attacks, being very capable and sure of themselves and not being able to trust their memory, to not being able to sleep. And those symptoms we can experience in a number of different other conditions, but feeling that, one, they're not understood, they're not believed, and also when HRT just doesn't do it all, what else can work? And we came to the real strong opinion that working with the mind and body on all conditions is actually really beneficial, and that's one of the things that's driving this.
Yeah, and if I can add to what Andrew mentioned, this is why I think it's fantastic that the study will include not just women who are in postmenopause, but also perimenopause, because even though it may not be with severe symptoms for every woman who is going through this transition, what we know is that up to 80% of women experience symptoms which can be moderate to severe. And what I find personally heartbreaking just to think about in terms of those who might not receive enough support, the symptoms may continue for up to 10, 20 years, even a lifetime, once the transition starts. So it's really something which would impact everything. And even if HRT works, and that's the first line, of course, it's always good to approach it in a more holistic way, and there would be always benefit to consider something which may regulate again stress levels and provide additional support. And in addition to this, of course, we will be considering women who are not on HRT for whatever reason. So that would be a good opportunity as well.
It makes just a huge amount of sense when I think about the very basics of a CBT model. You've got how you think affects how you feel emotionally and physically and what you do. And so if you can break the cycle at any point, and we're talking physiologically here, so if we can get the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system to regulate so that instead of being in a threat mode, we can activate the soothe mode, then our body then starts to communicate to our thoughts, it's okay. And our body then starts to communicate to our emotions and our anxiety, it's okay, it's okay. And we can also, from a behavior perspective, have a sense of autonomy of like, okay, I can feel that coming on. I've got something I can do physically about this.
Yes, that's correct. And we know that a CBT therapy is already in the NICE guidelines as an alternative to women who can't use HRT. But at the same time, there are small studies which confirm that approaches as what we will use as part of this study might be equally as effective as CBT. So it would be additional approach to address this. And hopefully one day it would be part of the NICE guidelines as well.
Oh, well, it's really exciting to find out what's going to happen.
Yes.
What's going to happen?
I've been working with people with severe OCD, severe depression, using CBT protocols, trauma using EMDR protocols. And even when you're doing everything, that doesn't always work. And they've gone off to Ben Federick, and they've done a program. And so one young woman, she was picking her lips from the age of 4, and she was 28 when we worked together. And we did the OCD during the day, but whatever I did, whatever relaxation exercises, visualization exercises, EMDR, trauma work, didn't touch it. It stopped for the first time in her life because her nervous system was calmer. So my hope is that it will lead to an integration. Wow. Rather than replace anything. There's a real opportunity of working with the nervous system. We do it to some degree with breathing exercises and things like that in CBT and other psychotherapies. But I think a fuller understanding of the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system, both in pain, inflammation, and how it can affect a range of different conditions, I think is really helpful.
Andrew, thank you so much for all your insights and sharing. And you're about to leave, but we're going to meet
Thank you both.
Ben.
Thank you.
So thank you for your time, Andrew. Danny, we just want to say thank you so much for your contribution. And we're now going to meet your sidekick, aren't we, Ben?
Yes, and I'm very happy that you will have a chance to talk to Ben because, as Andrew was saying, it's absolutely amazing and he did a massive amount of work. As anyone who does research knows how much work goes into planning a study, writing all the study documents, working with the ethics committee, coordinating the study, doing even the statistics behind this. It's, again, as you will see, amazing person to work with. So I think it would be great, Ben, to share a little bit more about his experience with the previous study. And I think whoever decides to come on this study, they would be very happy as well to work with Ben. So I will pass on to Ben next.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ben Allais, welcome. We've heard some great things about you and we'd like, could you just introduce yourself to us, please?
Yes, I'm Ben Allais. I work at the Open Practice. I've been here for about 18 months since the clinic first started. And I work as an assistant psychologist and lead researcher of the things that we have going on at the moment.
Okay, and those things that you have going on at the moment, particularly the project with Danny, could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Okay, so I'm guessing Andrew told you guys about the sort of the vagus program, working with the body, the nervous system, looking at neurodiverse children, mothers coming back, all of the good stuff as to how we ended up running these groups, essentially mothers having benefits. Here we are. Ben, Frederick and I, another Ben, we converted the individual program into a group setting, especially given the community sense, specifically for menopause, given what mothers were reporting. We felt that fundamentally neither Ben nor I, as two men in this scenario, should be ever really on a one-to-one basis of something like this, given how sensitive it is as an area. And essentially we wanted to create a group for it. So we ran two groups, essentially two small internal groups, for us to be able to go, okay, can we see improvements in menopausal symptoms at the baseline level? Because from my opinion, we basically want to have the statistics to say this stuff is actually doing what we think it's doing, instead of just making the claims and not having the evidence to back it up. And also, really importantly for us, to get the lived experience of the women who were in our first set of pilots to help reinforce and refine the groups moving forward. Basically, when we were done with that, the program itself is about 8 weeks. And that was our kind of internal pilot study. And we had 12 women, 2 separate groups. And the results were pretty impressive, which is good. Basically, we looked at menopause symptoms, menopause rating scale, and we looked at sleep, and we looked at everyday memory and cognitive function, because from genuinely speaking around the clinic, those were the symptoms that came up as the most impacted: sleep and the cognitive aspect of things. And then everything else gets caught up in the menopause symptom scale. So at its core, we did that pre and post. We saw an average drop of about, I think, 8.6 points. It means absolutely nothing to most people, but to put it in comparative space, most research that has looked at HRT, for example, hormone replacement therapy, generally sees drops of anywhere from maybe 5 to 9 points. So if we're looking at an intervention that's not pharmacological, not the current kind of go-to one, something that can be done whenever, wherever, essentially, in theory, and the kind of techniques that we can take forward, it's pretty comparative in that initial results to HRT, which is very cool, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So how I would summarize it, so you can correct me, is that you did a pilot study because you were thinking something seems to be going on here. You did a pilot study, and from your pilot study, the stats show that a non-invasive, non-medication, non-intrusive protocol that you're doing is getting results similar to HRT.
That's the gist of it. I want to say all of this with the big caveat of the reason that we're now doing a big study is that we know we don't want to take one group or group subsample of groups and make over claiming what's happening. But without getting fancy in the stats imply that it's not random chance that we found the results we found. It's what we call statistically significant, but we can kind of move past all of that. What we really care about is there clinical significance? Is there meaningful difference in the individual's lives and well-being? So we saw improvements in that. We also saw about a 50% improvement in sleep. And we can see that sleep is one of the things that, outside of eating and drinking, the only other thing we really need to do to survive is sleep. We don't have that, bad things happen. So to have improvements in sleep can then have much more increased repercussions in other areas, or rather beneficial outcomes in other areas. And then finally, in terms of energy, we also saw about a 30% improvement in those areas. So these were all kind of preliminary results. Like you're saying, ran a pilot went super well. It kind of confirmed some of the thought processes we had, and looking further into how we can understand menopause. How do you guys understand menopause? Can I ask this? Is that okay?
Yes.
What does it mean to you?
Georgina, where would you start?
Decline is hair loss. That's the thing. because I've got really fine hair anyway. That preoccupied me. The negative symptoms. Having said that, my mother sailed through it without too many problems. I think we're hearing a lot now in the media about some of the problems. Doesn't have to be, but it can be. It can be a significant challenge for women. And we know that for depression, for example, HRT can be more effective than antidepressants in supporting women going through the menopause. So, sorry, that was quite a long-winded answer.
But I think what you leapt to was personal experience, isn't it? And so when you think about this, like I remember going out with some friends and them saying about asking about menopause, sort of friends of a similar age, and me going, I don't think it's affecting me that much. And my husband's face was just like I told a completely different story. And then I started to recognize all the things that were happening. And like for me, HRT made a huge difference, and sleep, as you say. So one of the things was the hot flushes being sorry for the detail, like slightly embarrassing, but bursting to go for a wee, absolutely bursting and going, nothing. But I couldn't sleep. So I was up till like 2 o'clock in the morning until I was absolutely exhausted, then getting a few hours sleep. And as soon as I had HRT, that all sort of settled. So sleep is a big thing. The hormones going crazy, snapping. But I didn't think I was. I just thought everybody else was a bit of an idiot.
No, you're right. The bladder symptoms is a real common one, and ironically, one of the ones that are probably less talked about. We all know hot flashes. We all know the anxiety. And it's interesting you talked about the depression, and you're right that HRT is often more effective than antidepressants. And I think it very much comes down to what is the core reason for that, of what's bringing out depression on. Is it very much, imagine, you guys know, sorry, I'm not meaning to over-explain, the monthly cycle, right? And we know that where we are in our cycle dictates how we feel because of where our hormones are. So we can feel a certain way. I don't know, I'm saying we, but it sounds weird to say
Join us, Ben. Why not?
one can feel a certain way in a given week for no apparent reason. So we could be feeling depressed because simply our hormones, one's hormones, are in a state that isn't conducive to happiness, right? Versus in, say, a major depressive disorder, we know that there's other things going on in our lives and the structure of our lives, behavioral, cognitive, anything under the sun that's reinforcing those mechanisms. So are we dealing with, within perimenopause, are we dealing with kind of perimenopausal depression, or are we dealing with kind of major depressive disorder? So that's where a bit of disparity comes in. But I think it comes down to my original thing of all these symptom clusters often relate to, obviously, at the baseline, drop of estrogen, right? Or erratic estrogen. The sort of running theory as to why we think that the techniques and approaches that we do in the program are helpful is the general gist is to help improve regulation in what we call the autonomic nervous system, right? Central nervous system, essentially brain, autonomic nervous system, contact between brain and body. Our fight and flight is often what we think about. So if we can improve regulation in that, essentially be able to come in and out of stress more effectively, because stress isn't bad for us. Stress is useful, hypothetically, in certain situations. Stress is bad when it becomes chronic stress. Chronic stress impacts sleep, impacts everything. And we also know that estrogen and cortisol, which is our primary stress hormone, are created or have the same base molecule with a name that I can never pronounce, so I'm not going to try it now. It's not as simple. Yeah, no, it's pregnenolone. Oh, Danny waved at me. It's just saying yes, it's that one. Okay. They have the same starter molecule. It's not so simple as one to the other, but as estrogen fluctuates, cortisol fluctuates in turn. And think about so many of the symptoms of menopause, especially the vasomotor related symptoms. So hot flushes is tied into that nervous system, and anxiety and depression also tied in, memory also tied in. And that is kind of some of the thought process to why if we improve some regulation in that, We can just essentially find a bit more balance. It can allow the estrogen that we do still have left, because during menopause, the primary form of estrogen shifts from what we call estradiol, I think, to estradiol or something like that. Danny, looking at me.
Checking me down here.
Essentially, and that's a different form of estrogen that is for postmenopause or perimenopause onwards. And if we can help improve the balance of cortisol so it's no longer running the show, then hopefully we can get some improvements in some of those symptoms. Is some of the kind of the logic behind it, outside of an environment where we're trying to normalize and destigmatize. Because I think so much of what both of you touched on there was essentially the first thing we come to is negative. That's the first thing most people think about when it comes to menopause, which is really interesting, because I was reading just today about how this is incredibly culture dependent. Western world, it's all about the second you reach menopause, it's this whole, people view it as the end of life, right? And very much the media and interactions and everyone under the sun kind of views it in that way. And that's the narrative, which, like we were talking earlier prior to this, about the idea that when we're going through menopause, it's a big change in the body, right? Big change in the body, big change in the brain. But we're essentially being able to level up from one stage into the next, where actually now we can take away a few of the things that are holding us more down. I don't mean down because that sounds negative, but we become slightly less overwhelmed by emotional charge, for example.
Do you know, I love leveling up. I love it. I love it, Ben. This is fantastic. I'm going to tell people I'm leveling up.
Do it, because you are.
Yeah. And do you know, there are definitely benefits to it. So I'll share one of them is I used to be a massive people pleaser, and I've let go of that quite a lot. In fact, a bit too much sometimes. It's like, I don't care. I just do not care. And that is liberating. I tell you, it's liberating. So I'm going to use that. I'm leveling up.
I mean, definitely use it with a leveling up. And it's really interesting you brought up that exact example, because that's what the example I was going to use, is that if we think about it from an evolutionary perspective, we're shifting from what used to be, because remember, generally speaking, the age of going into motherhood has generally shifted back as lifestyles increased, and also one's own sense of power and like autonomy has increased, very much that choice. That shifted up. But if we think the last thousands of years, millions of years, etc., generally speaking, menopause would be the end of the mother cycle and therefore into the grandmother cycle. And think about the lessons we learned from our parents. The lessons we learned from our parents directly is mostly about, in our infancy, is having to take care of us, really making sure we go from day to day, versus our grandparents have a unique insight where they can pass over knowledge that a parent can't do. A grandparent is a little bit more hands-off. They can maybe sculpt a little bit more of an overall trajectory, but not a day-to-day, which means the day-to-day, like you're saying right there, is driven by, I have to give a crap. So if I don't give a crap, my child's going to die, right? In the worst way possible. A grandmother can fundamentally go, I know you're being taken care of, so let me give you these overall life teachings. In its essence is how some of the thought process behind how some of the world is viewing menopause obviously exists. It's like you're saying, we're essentially transferring into this place where you don't have to give a crap. You don't have to give a crap. And that's not even a... Sorry, go on, Julia.
I was going to say, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think my generation, we have quite a lot of late mothers. And if I look at my children's school, some of the mothers are a good 10 to 15 years younger than me. And so I'm in the thick of mothering, but also heading rapidly into grannying, with being a granny nowhere in sight right now in my life. And so you got to carry those two things. So Ben, if I were to join your research trial, is it a group that you run to teach people these vagus nerve related activation skills?
Yeah, so essentially the groups are currently set up 8-week program, in person, how we're currently setting them up, and groups of up to say 12 individuals. We're not it's not specifically peri or postmenopause, is not specifically being on HRT or not. It's, do we have unwanted menopausal symptoms? What can we do about it at its core? And then, yes, the groups are set up that, obviously, coming me up, initial introductions. One major reason that we wanted to do them in a group, outside of obviously me and Ben being men, was that sense of community was really key. So we have a bit of space in each group for just a little bit of that kind of peer-to-peer contact. How are things kind of going? To sort of talk with someone else, because I don't know, how often do you guys have the opportunity to kind of share how things are going in specifically the menopausal realm with your peers? Is it something that's more talked about now? How can you help me a little bit understand?
Yes, it is more talked about, I would say. Yeah.
Davina McCall had a lot to do with that, I think.
So I think like having a bit of space for that has been quite nice. And then essentially, yes, each week, especially the first ones, we have about 5 core concepts that we look at, all essentially hoping to help regulate the nervous system or potentially help get us out of states of stress. So, for example, breath work. Have you ever had someone on here talking about breath work?
We haven't.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so breath work is essentially all about the breath. There's many parts of it that go more into mindfulness, but if we're thinking just kind of on an operational level, down in our bellies, we have our diaphragm. Our diaphragm is just under our ribs, and it's our primary breathing muscle. You ever seen kind of like, it looks like a big umbrella as we breathe. The vagus nerve runs through the diaphragm. And the vagus nerve is one of the most direct ways we can access that autonomic nervous system and that sense of the parasympathetic nervous system, the relax, the rest and digest, the come back from a state of stress back into what we call our window of tolerance.
The soothe system.
The soothing system, exactly. Imagine I was have a very nice, relaxing voice. It would stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. So essentially, if we can do, for example, slow, prolonged exhales, we know that brings the heart rate down, activates our sympathetic nervous system, and brings us into a bit more of a state of relax. Does that make sense?
I'm doing it right now.
Exactly. Prolonged exhales.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're just bringing it down. Like, that's one very direct route that we can tap into the vagus nerve, and engaging in some more regular forms of breath work can help bring some of that balance in.
So Ben, can I share with you the breath work that I do clinically, and then you can tell me how that fits in or if that sits somewhere else. So when I do breath work, I'm talking, it's often with trauma or, trying to regulate nervous systems. And I'll do a bow tie breathing, because they used to do square breathing, and I heard actually your exhale longer really helps with your parasympathetic nervous system. So I used to do a word, relax in a bow tie, because I just imagine it brings it down. I'm visual, and also a word. If you're counting, I'm like, I'm out of step. So it's, and my learning was, as long as it's regular, that's one of the most important things, because that makes your heart rate regulate.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the parasympathetic nervous system, is regulating the heart rate part of that, like the regularness of it, or are you focused on the out breath to like sort of bring it down?
Interestingly, I think both hold a role. We know that kind of regulating the heartbeat does matter, but we also, have you ever heard of heart rate variability?
Yeah.
And the core concept of that is your heart rate isn't necessarily regular. It's a matter of, the prime example is if you kind of take you feel your pulse and you breathe in quickly, and then you slowly exhale, and you do that a few times, you'll probably notice that your heart rate will speed up and then slow down as you exhale, and speed up and slow down. That's what we're kind of expecting to see. But for some of us that have a more potentially what we call a dysregulated nervous system, whatever that means, without necessarily being good or bad, that would have less difference between the inhale and the exhale.
Okay.
Right? Because at its core, the inhale is, okay, let's get that blood route. We have to get that to everything so that we can go. The exhale is, okay, we can now calm down a little bit. So that's in there. But having a consistent heartbeat in terms of within a space, if you're in a relaxed space, then yes, having a consistent heartbeat would probably be sending good signals to your brain. If you were to have an erratic heartbeat for no reason, for example, when it is in response to breath, it's for a reason. If it's potentially stress that's making it like more palpitations, and that erratic nature, palpitations, that more erratic nature would probably be sending less good signals to your brain because it's abnormal, essentially. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, it's part of it, but not as essential as the deep out breath. The deep out breath is where if you're doing vagus nerve work, the deep out breath is where it's at. Would you say?
Essentially, yes. The matching the heart rate, I think, is good for overall centering, functioning, and being in that kind of optimal zone.
Yeah.
Those extending exhales would very much be to really kind of bring that down. We use it specifically in a protocol just before sleep to help basically get the body in a pretty ready level in terms of if we're picturing more activity, less activity, getting it closer to less activity so we're able to access those deeper levels of sleep faster is the basic concept that we've been seeing from clients and from sessions.
Okay, that's really, really helpful. So in your clinic, you do this breath work. Is that quite a significant part of it? Plus, you've got the cohort, so you've got other people with shared experience.
So the breath work, that would be one. We do one slightly later that's a little bit more activating, where we purposely do breathing that can activate our sympathetic nervous system. And then we integrate and activate our parasympathetic nervous system. Essentially, we get hyped and then we relax down. This is for multiple reasons, one of which, fundamentally, one of the reasons that stress is quite complicated, chronic stress is complicated, is we end up in a place that we are constantly high and we don't know how to come down. So what we're doing is we're essentially tensing and detensing. So we're stressing ourselves and then relaxing ourselves to just teach the body a little bit of, okay, I can swap between the two states, as one example. And then when we do it specifically, say around the time of bed, imagine, we know progressive muscle relaxation works. You tense, and then when you can relax on a slightly deeper level. Same concept here. We do essentially hyperventilation in some form to activate that sympathetic nervous system. We get into that stress state. And then when we can bring it down, we can come down even further than we were before and really go, this is that relaxation feeling. You know, that really euphoric feeling when you maybe do like a massage or a certain form of relaxation techniques and you're like, oh my God, you know, that's sort of a bit of an aim. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the breath work. We've talked about the group. And are there some other components that fit into this package?
Yes, there's sort of 5 key areas we look at, breathwork being one of them. We look at some things called primitive reflexes, all about essentially seeing if there's things that has occurred through menopause that has put us into a higher stress state on a very much body reflex level, not on a conscious level, and how we can do certain exercises to relieve that. And then we have a few other components, including some soft, not really tissue massage, but some stretches that we know, essentially the vagus nerve runs through our neck. If our neck is stressed, we're stressed. We all know the classic thing of how are you feeling? I'm feeling stressed. Where do you feel it? I feel it in my neck and my shoulders, right? But then that causes a feedback loop that stress there and tension there leads to tightness. Tightness leads to less flow of the vagus nerve, less ability to regulate. So if we can loosen that up and bring a bit more movement back into that, that's a benefit. We look at a few things to do with balance and the vestibular system. Again, how it relates. I talk more about it on the program itself so people can understand and how it directly relates to menopause. And then we look at some things to do with cold water, which is always fun. Is the overall level, but it's all about throughout the program finding what works for the people in the group, right? It's not, here's 5 exercises that you're going to do for the next 8 weeks, goodbye.
And so is
very
it
much
tailored? Do you find that some people, something works and other people, like you said about the cold water being fun, I hate being cold. And so it might work really well for me because I hate it so much, or it might not so much. So would you then tailor that according to the individual in front of you?
Completely. Like the whole program is designed to be tailored. We have the core concepts because we've seen from our clinical practice that leads to the most improvements in people. It's why we're here. It's why we do what we do. But very much it's about providing the tools, seeing what works for an individual, and seeing how we can set it up as the routine to meet that end, right? And if some things aren't working on one area, so say we're looking at something to do with balance, which is all about the vestibular system and that sort of regulation, where the more balance you have, generally speaking, from a survival state, the more emotionally settled you can be because of looking around and running away from predators and each step being bad, as a basic example. Ben Frederick will give you some lovely facts about balance, but I won't. And essentially, that's one component. But we might have one specific exercise that's not really working. How can we try a different way to activate the same components in the brain, essentially, is what we're trying to do. So that's sort of how we tailor it. And also fundamentally, like you're saying, we might try some things to do with cold water. It doesn't have to be a cold water shower. We could do cold flannels or something about the hands or some gargling. If at the end of that, you're like, nah, it's not for me, well, then obviously we're not going to go down that line because each of the other core components, you must do it.
Get in the ice bath.
Each of the core components all hold their own weight. We could have just one of them being the whole intervention, hypothetically. It's just these 5 keep popping up for us. And we have a few supplementary ones as our clinical practice is developing. And as we find new things that are helpful, we can bring them into the group space. And also, we're having a group chat with everyone who's come on the course from before, which means that essentially it's a Facebook group, so it's optional, where if we kind of come up with some new kind of components and exercises, we'd add them to that group so that people can be continually up to date. Actually, to be fair, the groups that we ran before, from the 12 of them, we're now going to run a little refresher like afternoon so we can go over the bits and bobs again because they all quite liked it, which is quite nice to hear from them.
It sounds lovely. It sounds like it has tremendous value to people. So, Ben, if people want to be involved in your trial, what do they do? How do they get in touch?
So you can come to our website, which is, I'll just say it for now. It's www.theopen-practice.co.uk. And then for this, you can do /research, and it will take you to the research page. And on there, you can find out everything about the study, including seeing the findings from our last set of groups. And then there's a form at the top. There's a little inquiry form, essentially register interest, drop your email, really basic information, demographics, just confirming woman in a menopausal age range. And then we have consent procedures, the information sheet for the whole study. And then I'd send over the initial questionnaires and we'd be able to hopefully get started.
Wonderful. Well, Ben, thank you so much for your time. Loads of really interesting things there. So great insights there. And thank you so much.
It's been really lovely.
Fascinating talking to you, Ben. Thank you. I'm actually feeling relaxed because I've been practicing the breathing. So I'm like, la la la.
We need more of this. We need more of this to chill her out, okay? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, guys.